Hey, it's Joe West from the West Barn with
Mike Shimshack.
And our guest today is one and only John Rich. John Rich is, he's like a serial entrepreneur. He's a country star, but he's also a hit record producer, a hit songwriter, a long time before he was known as an artist, and has gone on to, of course, be all over television. And I watched him on his season of The Apprentice, which was great. And I want to ask you some stories about Trump as well. And now has his own show on Fox Nation. Is Fox Nation a different station than Fox?
Yes. Yeah. So Fox Nation, first of all, it's good to be on with you. Thanks for inviting me on your show. I love your show. Fox Nation. So it's a different platform. So foxnation.com. It's not a news platform. It's more of an entertainment platform that Fox News built. So it's like a lot of people that you would see normally bringing you news are bringing you other things. Like Kill Me does stories about, historic events. He'll go to the Alamo, or he'll go to George Washington's house or whatever. And so they branched out outside of their regular Fox News people to guys like me and said, hey, our audience seems to like seeing you and hearing from you. Would you ever want to do a show with Fox Nation? I said, yeah, I'd like to do one called The Pursuit, about the pursuit of happiness. Because I say this all the time, that our country doesn't guarantee us happiness. It guarantees us the pursuit of happiness. Yeah, and there's such a drastic difference between those two things, man. I mean, honestly, you could kind of boil America down in a lot of ways to two different ideologies of maybe a lot of Americans think, well, if I'm not totally happy or have everything I want or whatever, the government should just give it to me. And then you got the other side saying, if I'm not totally happy and don't have everything I want, I've got the ability to think and work and go after my American dream, whatever that is. There's no guarantee you're ever going to get it. But think about the billions of people in the world today that woke up this very morning that have just as much talent and drive and intellect and passion and everything it would take to be a success and to do something great with their life. But because of where they live and who controls their life, they're not allowed to exhaust their potential as a being created by the same God that created the rest of us. So we're so fortunate that we get to live in America that allows us the right to pursue happiness. It's actually a right. I don't think any other country has that actually written in a constitution that, or a preamble or a declaration that, hey, you guys have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So the show I have on Fox Nation, I interview all kinds of people, from inventors to actors, athletes, gold medalists, songwriters, just interesting people that have done pretty incredible things with their lives. And short of it being in America, it probably would have never happened. Even like Robert Herjavec from Shark Tank, his dad, that episode's out now on Fox Nation, where his dad was in a Yugoslavian communist prison, had been locked up 19 times because he was a enemy of the communist state. He didn't believe in communism. And back then, they'd lock you up, just for saying anything. And so they did. And so in the middle of the night, Robert's dad breaks out of jail, shows up at their house in the middle of the night. Robert's like 6 years old. He grabs his wife, paid off a guy to hide on a cargo boat. And they got on a boat, came across the Atlantic. They tried to get into the United States, but it was like the way he describes it, it was like, these days are the days that America lets you in, and these days are the days Canada lets you in. I guess the port they came in, Canada was letting people in that day, and they said, all right, I guess we're coming into Canada. And so they moved into Canada, and Robert grew up knowing someday I want to have my own business in America, and he's now done that. Robert's wildly successful. So anyway,
half of that is
that's a long
explanation
of my show, but that's what my show's about.
Yeah, I was saying it's in half of it is showing people that it can be done. When I came up, I was always like, when I saw somebody that was rich or that had made it, I was like inspired by it. I didn't necessarily have that perspective like, man, they get all the breaks, or man, I want what that guy has. Why does he have so much? I was always inspired to say, that guy driving by in a Porsche, it's like, man, one day I could work hard and maybe get one of those. So it gave me a way or a roadmap to say at least the things I wanted to acquire that I put value in. It gave me a way to say, like, man, I'm just going to dig in. If that guy could do it, why can't I do it? And thankfully, we live in a place that will let you do it.
That's the correct way to look at it, my opinion. But unfortunately, for the past 30 years or so in our education system, I think it's been infiltrated from the way they write the books to the way the teachers have been taught to teach, or they take it upon themselves to teach that capitalism is bad, socialism is good. They bring all kinds of things into the classroom that are anti the spirit of what built our country. I mean, our country was built on men and women who risked their lives to come over here, signed their names to documents knowing if they ever got caught, they're going to kill them, their family, burn their houses down. I mean, it was serious business, give me liberty or give me death. That wasn't some bumper sticker. I mean, that was a real deal. And so those are the people we come from. And I still hold true to those values.
We get separated from that. It's like Pearl Harbor happens and everybody's reacquainted with pain. World War II happens, 9/11 happens. All these things happen and we get a little dose of what reality is. We were arguing about meaningless things. We had gotten down to this point in our society where we would want to punch each other in the face over these simple little like pronouns, and it's like, not to say those aren't important things. Right. We'd kind of wasted away. And then something like this comes, COVID-19 and the riots, and you become reacquainted with maybe some purpose and some grit and like, hey, what's really important now? What is it that I'm willing to die for? What I'm willing to go out and march for? It's an interesting time. It's unknown, so it's scary, but it's actually a good thing. I think every once in a while to have the world shaken up a little bit so you get to know what's important to you.
Well, I mean, I had a buddy of mine the other day who's not a Christian at all, but he's a good friend of mine. And he asked me, he said, John, you think God knows what's going on the earth right now? And I said, yes. I said, matter of fact, it says in the Bible that God knows how many hairs are on your head. It says he knows when a sparrow hits the ground. And the point was, if he knows those things, of course he knows everything that's going on. He built it. His will, it's his plan. We don't know what his plan is. We don't know what his will is. We just know that we're supposed to lean on him and trust in him that whatever he's going to do, he's going to do. And he has not always made it easy on people. And he's got his reasons for that. And we'll see how this whole thing plays out. I know that you can go back and read through the scriptures and see many times, Israel sometimes he would deliver them out of Egypt. And then when they turned their back on God, what did he do? Made them wander out in the wilderness for 40 years. And he had Babylon take them over and all kinds of things. Here comes Nebuchadnezzar throwing Daniel in the lion's den and all these things like that. I mean, I adhere to scripture in times like this. Go back and read what it says. When the verse says, this is God speaking, I am the same yesterday, today, and forever. My word does not change. Well, if you believe that, which I do, then that means the same way he reacted to things throughout scripture is the same way he's going to react to them today. And so you gotta trust in him, man. Life, if you live to be 150 years old, that's like not even an eyelash compared to what eternity is. And people got to remember that.
What do you say? Like, we're in music road land here, and both Mike and I are record producers and songwriters, and we live here and have been in the culture for so long. What do you think about the culture of Nashville? Is it leaning left? Is it leaning right? Do you find it? You don't find it difficult to speak your mind, but there's an undertide of sentiment that people feel afraid to speak out against or towards. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, the record industry, I'd say in the last 20 years, has gone hardcore left. There's no doubt about it. And so here's the problem now. So you've got artists who don't share the same ideology with the president of their record label, but they know that if they are vocal like a guy like me about a certain subject, man, that record label head he pretty much controls your future at that point as far as being a singer he does. And that's quite a hammer to hold over people's heads. And so I believe that freedom of expression in the music industry, especially in Nashville, is completely squelched. It's completely shut down. The only people that are allowed to have freedom of speech and be vocal about things artist-wise are the ones that share the beliefs of the people that run their record labels. That's just a fact. And so you've got a guy like me who I don't have a record label. I don't want to have a record label. There's reasons I don't want one. I don't know that they would want me anyway, but if they did, I would say no, because they get to determine what I get to say and what I don't get to say. And if I don't adhere to that, there's serious penalties that happen. The same thing exists across all kinds of corporations around our country. I mean, look at people at Google that have spoken up about things that they saw censorship-wise, or at Facebook or Twitter, any of the big ones that spoke up, wrote a report, made a post about something they saw that they thought was squelching our First Amendment rights or freedom of speech. And what happens to those people? I mean, they run them out of the building. It is not fun what happens. So you say it's easy for me to speak up. No, it's not actually easy for me to speak up, because I know exactly what's going to happen. You know, there's going to be a boomerang effect of a lot of people that in our industry that are going to come at me with everything they got because they disagree, which is their right to do. So it's not the most comfortable reaction that I get. But at the same time, what's my other option? Just sit down, shut up, and don't say what you actually think? No. Yeah. I'm an American, by God. I have a right to say and express what I feel to be true to me.
Yeah. And people buy into that. It's like you're a figure that has become who you are because of your opinions. So people that are drawn to you, like if you take that away from a guy like you, well, then what audience do you have, right? And I'm sure that the audience that you have, you know a lot of audiences. You know pop country audience. You've written songs and produced records, and so you know, like let's say like a fan of a pop artist is a different fan than a diehard Big and Rich fan. You know, do you find that your fans, the ones that you have, are probably incredibly loyal?
Well, so I know what you're asking. So the Big and Rich fan base is, and I think my fan base is outside of Big and Rich, is not one party or the other. There's all kinds of people. Some of my strongest fans totally disagree with most of what I say, but I have never gone after them in a way that would demonize them, disrespect them. Yeah, I just say, here's how I view this subject. Here's how I put into practice in my life what backs up what I just said. And you can agree or disagree, but I don't ever tell them, hey, you're a bad person, you're evil, you're whatever. I never personally attack them just because I disagree with them. You need to always remember that somebody that disagrees with your opinion on a serious subject, if they disagree with you in an extremely passionate way, there's a reason why they feel that way most of the time. It's either an experience that they've had, it's the way they were raised, it's something in their life that occurred that caused them to feel that way, even though it is a 180 from the way I feel about how I feel. So I always keep that in mind.
That's some very enlightened way of looking at it. I appreciate that opinion.
You have to respect their opinion, even though you disagree with it, because there's a reason they feel that way. I mean, they didn't just snap their fingers and just all of a sudden start feeling that way. I mean, even as recently as yesterday, and I won't say her name, but I sat down with a very liberal Nashville city council member who I'd never met in person, and had about almost an hour conversation outside, sitting at a little table on a sidewalk. And there was never a cross word. There was never any anger or anything like that. It was a real conversation about issues going on in our town right now. For instance, 32% tax hikes on people that own buildings and own houses and farms and all that kind of thing. And the other things, the riots and things that have been happening. And it was so interesting to speak to this person for an hour. And I get home and my wife goes, well, how'd that go? I said, it went great, actually. I said, it was very interesting to sit with someone who I'm diabolically opposed to basically every position they have, and vice versa, yet come out of there with potentially some solutions to some of these problems. Because there's nothing more powerful than seeing adversaries actually agree on a subject and move forward. You ever pull that one off, man, it's going to happen. Whatever that initiative is will happen if you can ever pull that off. It's just very difficult in today's environment because of the way people stoke fires and create so much angst between us all.
How do you think we get back to civility, to agree to disagree without, like you said, all the name calling? How do we get back to that?
Well, number one, people have to stop calling each other names. I mean, it's got to start there. So it's got to start with them wanting to see it actually get to be a better situation. Some people don't want to see it get to be a better situation. Right. That's a big problem. Yeah. And you can't make them not want to, and I mean both sides. You can't make them want to have a conversation like what I had yesterday. But there again, you asked me about my fan base. You know, if they knew that I sat down and spent an hour talking to a hardcore, dedicated liberal and had a conversation, a bunch of my fans might have said, well, man, you should have just let her have it, right? And then the other ones would probably be mad at her for going, how dare you sit down with a guy like John Rich and discuss anything? You should have just thrown a milkshake in his face or whatever. But it's going to come down to leading by example, you know, where people like me and people like her and other people that you would never think in a million years would do that, actually do it and do it out in the open.
Right. Me and Mike was just talking about this morning about last night there was a giant protest down on Broadway. I saw one of my buddies had a live stream up, and it was just a never-ending line of people. And I thought to myself, okay, you have my attention now. It's like the news cycles are so tight that once you have this critical mass of attention, I'm like at the point, like, what do we do? What do we say? It's like that Toby Keith song, you know, Love Me If You Can, Chris Wallen and Craig Wiseman. That was such a great tune because I've got equal parts of my DNA that are like, want to get up and say, hey, stop doing that. And then the other part is like, well, there's an underlying systemic thing that I feel compelled to listen to, right? And it's like, what is the ask? What can we do? What do you think it is that we can do as artists and people, just human beings? What is the road out?
Well, the root answer of that question is human beings can't figure that out.
Yeah,
they've never been able to figure that out since Cain killed Abel. I mean, if you believe the Bible, which people that don't aren't going to care what I have to say next, but that's all right. Doesn't mean it's not true. It's true, yeah, because it is true. Just because you don't believe it doesn't mean you don't need to listen to what I'm about to say. But all the way back to the very first people God created, there was sin, there was murder, there was violence. It is part of the human condition. And the only way out of that is to surrender your life to Jesus Christ, who is perfect, and your will has to become subservient to his will. And that is a very hard thing for a human being to do. But that's why Jesus came to earth in person, to show that it could be done. You know, prior to Jesus being here, it was God the Father in heaven, right? He's like, man, earth is having a real hard time with this. And you know what? I'm gonna show up as an actual human for 33 years and show them it can be done. And not only that, I'm gonna die for these people. I'm gonna go to Hades for 3 days for these people. And I'm gonna rise again and show them I can defeat this, and they need to trust me with their lives. You know, that is, you're not gonna hear preachers talk like that, which I'm honestly really sad about the shape of a lot of our churches, that they don't just preach the direct message of Jesus Christ. They have to fan out and bring in their own opinions. Your opinion does not matter. My opinion does not matter. Nobody's opinion matters. What matters is what he said. And if you follow what he said and you really are subservient to him, then all that stuff about wanting to be mean to people and call people names and stir up strife and discord amongst other human beings will exit your mind. It will leave. It just won't be there anymore. That just won't be something you want to do. And so I'm not perfect at that by a long shot. Even sometimes when I'm trying to get a point across without causing strife, sometimes a word will still hit somebody wrong. I'm like, dang it, I didn't say that exactly right. And sometimes I say it exactly right, and they want to see strife caused by it. So they just take what I said and whip it around in some other direction out of context, and they take off down a path. So, you know, every man is responsible for himself, for his own soul, for his own relationship with God. And I would urge people to pick up the book, get on their knees, talk to him. He's right there ready to listen to you.
You know what you've done real well, and I remember as a young kid, first moving to Nashville from New York City in 2005, 6. I went up to the what was the place up the Cannery Ballroom, but the other one, Mercy Lounge, and I saw the Music Mafia one night, and there was such an energy, and this is to the point of what you've done well. It's like even your relationship with Big Kenny, you guys are like yin and yang, and it's like anybody that is in your position that has the wiring that you have, and then has a partnership and a brotherhood with somebody that is the opposite of that. It's like when you see these guys that get married to the girls that are the exact opposite of them.
Right.
There's something really cool about that. And the energy that I felt that night at the Mercy Lounge was like, I couldn't really put my finger on it, but as an artist, as a creator, I knew that there was something happening in that room that was just like, it felt like a movement, like I wanted to be a part of, like if you were to go march against something. There was something happening.
Right.
And it was sort of spawned off the both of you having the mutual respect. Like you could tell that you wanted the best for him and he wanted the best for you. And there was this thing that was like, that's the best part of all of us. And even in our weakest moments, no matter how hard we feel about something or how strongly we feel, we still have that tendency to be able to see it from the other side. But it has to be seen through some sort of unexplainable thing. And the two of you guys had that. Still have it, I'm sure.
Well, you're talking about Music Mafia, obviously. So there's the ring. Can you see it?
That's awesome.
That's the Music Mafia ring. So there's like 9 of those that exist from.
That's the thumbnail for the episode too.
Yeah, the original group of Music Mafia. But you know, our whole thing, Big and Rich, our music. The very first thing we said at the very beginning, before you even heard a song sung, was the message. We are country music without prejudice. Now, what that meant at the time, and it still means the same thing then, but specifically to that time, music like what me and Kenny were making, or Cowboy Troy, people like that, was so outside of what the music industry said was going to work. I mean, they're like, what is this? Is this a joke? Like, what are you guys doing? And their favorite phrase back then was, well, that ain't country. Well, that ain't country. Well, that ain't country. Well, it's interesting. That ain't country. I mean, how many times have I heard that? And we said, you know what? We've got friends who are R&B singers in Nashville. We've got friends who are rappers. We've got friends who are spoken word artists. We've got bluegrass guys. We've got hard rock metal guys, that we're all friends with each other as a creative group of people. And we think it's kind of BS that we all can't play together at the same time. Why do I have to go to that bar to watch him and that bar to watch her, and over here to watch this band, and over here to watch that band? That's dumb. And that's not the way we see the future of music. We see the future of music as everybody's in the same room feeding off of what their strengths are. And wow, I wonder what would happen then. So nobody would give us a venue. So we just said, fine, we'll find a venue that'll let us do it. And it was the Pub of Love, which held like 50 people. And we're dragging couches up the stairs, you know, and lighting candles and inviting our artist buddies. And after, I think we did 72 Tuesdays in a row of Music Mafias. And by the time it was over, everybody in that group, so Gretchen Wilson, James Otto, John Nicholson, Big Kenny, myself, Cowboy Troy, all of us, Shannon Lawson, everybody had gotten major record deals. And the industry, I actually looked out one night, guys, and I saw James Stroud, which in 2000, 2001, hotter than a match, right, as a record producer. James Stroud sitting next to a homeless guy that we were friends with, that we always invited in. And he was just sitting there, and you see Ashley Worley, Paul Worley's daughter, is sitting out there, and she's a fan of it going, what is going on?
Right.
And Ashley reporting back to her dad, who is an incredible musician, obviously, and record producer, he goes, well, I'm going to go check it out. He comes and checks it out and went, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. I don't know what this is, but I love it. And so it finally took a guy like Paul to say, I think Big and Rich, I don't know if this is going to work, but we have to record what you guys are doing. And Big and Rich is then born 2003.
Go ahead.
Sorry. We had Adam Schoenfeld on recently. And I was telling him that I lived up in New York City. I was living in Brooklyn at the time. And we were hearing constantly about the Music Mafia all the way.
Really?
Oh, yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
it was the talk. And like, that was what we started to see Nashville as a place that maybe was starting to get more open, I guess,
Well, the nonsense about their argument, the industry's argument, was to say, Big and Rich, that ain't country. I'm like, I almost took it as a compliment, because guess who else the industry said wasn't country? Johnny Cash.
Right.
Yeah.
Conway Twitty wasn't country.
Right.
Conway Twitty, if you go back and look, they said he's an Elvis impersonator. That's how they referred to him. Eddie Arnold and I, you want to hear a story? Eddie Arnold and I actually had lunch together one day, back in about 1997 or 8. Not long before he passed away. Joe Galante, the world-renowned record label exec, a New Yorker too.
Yep.
Joe knew that I was a fan of Eddie Arnold, and so as a birthday present, Joe set up a surprise lunch for me to have lunch with Eddie Arnold. And so I had lunch with Eddie Arnold. You know what he told me? You know, the nicest guy that ever lived, the tuxedo, the country gentleman, the whole thing. He said, son, I've heard that people say your kind of music's not country, you know, and that you don't have a spot in this town. I said, yes, sir. I hear it all the time. He goes, that's the same thing they told me. And I said, what? I said, how could that even be? He said, because at the time I came out, I had string sections behind me on stage. I had horns. I had other things going on. And people were saying, Eddie Arnold isn't country. He needs to be out there, you know, with the big band guys. He needs to be out there with, you know, Glenn Miller. He needs to be over there. Count Basie, put him over there. This is not a country guy. He goes, but John, for me, I knew I was a country guy, just in my mind, and as an artist, that's how I want to deliver my brand of country music. He goes, so son, don't ever let them back you down off of what you're hearing in your head. This was the greatest advice amazing. I ever got from anybody.
Well, the cool thing about for people who don't know, I believe there's two kinds of people that come to Nashville to make a creative effort. There's the people that go in and they look and they start making donuts. They start hanging out with the people making the donuts and they start just churning them off the line. And then there's people that are just a little bit of a misfit and they just come in and they do what they do. And even though the universe is telling them, hey, we don't need that, that isn't who we are, those are the people that change the next 10 years of country. Those are the people that the Keith Urbans that take over from the Kenny Rogers, right? The people that tell you what country music is. And Save a Cowboy for me was a song. There's been a couple instances in my life where I've looked at my radio and I've kind of stopped. I was driving up in Pittsburgh when I lived there, and I'm driving up the highway, and Sister Havana by Urge Overkill came on the radio, rock song, and it just lit me up. I pulled over and stared at my radio. Just couldn't drive. You know, right. And that, your song, you guys' song, Ride a Cowboy, was that. The production on that song was probably outlawed in town at that time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
and that was Adam Schoenfeld, who you interviewed earlier, playing all those guitar parts. Yeah.
Dude,
amazing
it was
guitars.
The production is out of this world on it. And then just the content, the lyric on it was a lyric like I've never heard before. It changed everything for me about what I thought was possible, what I thought I could do in country music, what was allowed. So those are the kind of things, like these monumental moves, but you don't get to that if you're sitting down every day trying to write for the cut sheet, who's cutting that week and what they will and won't say and what their vocal range is. You don't get any of that, right. But it takes guys like you, and I love you for this. I love that you are able to have the relationship that you have with people, having the strong opinions that you have, but then being bold in the music, being able to show up and do these things that nobody's asking for this stuff. Nobody has called your phone saying, we need to Ride a Cowboy.
Well, they don't want that to happen because they don't know how to duplicate that. That's the real issue. It scares them. It's not that maybe they probably liked listening to it then when it all came out, but they're going, if that becomes popular, we don't have anything like that on our record label, and we don't know where to find that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Think about the people that run record labels. You know, there's very few of them that are risk takers. The risk takers at record labels generally don't last very long unless they take a risk that just blows up. I mean, but the majority of them, if they take risks and that risk doesn't pay off, they find somebody that's not so risky, you know, whoever's above their head. So you've got a lot of guys and gals that are really playing just to protect paychecks and hold the status quo. They're trying to cut the best music they can within the parameters that are considered acceptable at the time. So it really comes down to artists that have to redefine it. Because the industry's never going to redefine it. The artists have to.
So now that was the second single off of that record. What was the first?
Right. The first one was called Wild West Show.
Okay.
Feeling like Tonto riding a Pinto, trying to chase the Lone Ranger down. That was the first single, and we were told by the record label, number one, don't even put Save a Horse Ride a Cowboy on your record, because it's already so, your record's already so out there. If you put that on there, nobody's going to take you seriously. And sure enough, guys like Peter Cooper at the Tennessean writes a terrible review, like says this is like a circus. What is this? It's not even worth listening to. And we actually sent Peter a bottle of champagne and a dozen roses and said, thank you for at least listening to the record.
Yeah,
you know,
cool.
And so now he's friendly to Big and Rich. But the point was, Save a Horse wasn't even supposed to go on the record. Kenny and I said, come on, man, just let us put it on there. Track 7, something. Bury it down in there. And they said, okay, fine. It'll be an album cut. Well, what happened was, Wild West Show comes out, and a few weeks later, the whole album, Horse of a Different Color, comes out. And so the fans get their hands on this record and start requesting track number 7 at their radio station.
Oh, wow.
And a jock down in Florida gets a request, hey, can you play Big and Rich, Save a Horse Ride a Cowboy? And the guy goes, I don't even know what that is. And he goes, it's on their record. It's track 7. The guy goes, okay, I'll play it like some Friday night request line show. He plays it. The phones explode. He plays it again. They explode again. The PDs all start talking about it. And they said, well, maybe it'll explode here too. And they all started doing it. That song virally took off. It was never even supposed to be a single. And another interesting factoid, you guys will love this. So the week Save a Horse Ride a Cowboy died short of reaching the top 10. It was never a top 10 single.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It died at number 11 on the chart due to lack of research, was the answer from radio. And that exact same week, we were the number 1 selling album in country music, sold 118,000 copies that week.
Right.
Wow.
So if that doesn't tell you something, you know, artists don't need to listen to the industry or radio to a fault. Now, they need to listen to them strategically sometimes, and how to go about your business and rolling out plans and things like that. But when it comes to the creative side, an artist needs to be an artist.
Yeah.
You don't need the label telling you what colors you can use and what canvas you can use and how big or small it should be. Make your art, and if you make great art, a lot of times the public determines the winners and the losers.
How did that change the direction? Like, was the tide turned after that at the label? Were they like all about, you know, the circus? I mean, the guy didn't know it, but he meant it as a derogatory comment, but it's probably the coolest description of what you guys are doing, right?
Yeah, we thought it was great to hear our I mean, you're running around with Cowboy Troy and 2 Foot Fred. Good God. I mean, what's going on around here?
But did they change? Was it like you guys were in control at that point?
When that hit, yeah, they were like, whatever y'all want. What else do you want? Let's throw logs on the fire. There's a guy named Robert Deaton, who we all know in Nashville, who actually made a huge, huge move for us. He believed in what we were doing. He believed in the music mafia, music without prejudice, and all of that, like Paul Worley did. We had a couple of champions like that. And Robert Deaton, I still to this day do not know how he pulled this off. And 2000, I believe it was 2004, had Big and Rich with Cowboy Troy and 2 Foot Fred not sing Save a Horse Ride a Cowboy. We sang the Ballad of Big and Rich to open the CMA Awards. We opened the show. So here I come out in a fur coat. Here's Cowboy Troy rapping. Here's little 2 Foot Fred running around. And Kenny's got a megaphone with a microphone in front of it. And people's eyes are like, I mean, they're like, what is going on right now? And that blew the door open to the general public.
And the culture at this time, let's not forget, it was still George Strait. It was,
Alan Jackson.
This was like traditional,
Martina.
what we're calling traditional country.
Yeah,
so
right.
Like, what's going through your head when you're standing on side of the stage with a flying V and a big fur coat on and about to go out with a 2 Foot Fred and a guy with a megaphone to that audience? Are you like, this is about to go incredibly wrong or right? What's your level of security?
I thought this is the only time this is ever going to be allowed to happen, so I'm going to knock the absolute shit out of this, is what I was thinking. I mean,
the flying V is incredible, by the way.
Yeah, our attitude was, we're coming for you. If this is the one shot we get, by God, you're going to get the full shot. And that's what we gave them, and then the doors went blowing open, and you know the rest of the story.
The flying V is amazing, by the way. That was incredible.
I've actually got one. Hold on. I got one right here.
God, so good.
Let's see here. Here's one right here. Can you see that?
Ah, it's amazing.
In God we trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
this was actually the one that I played during the Save a Horse Ride a Cowboy video. So there it is right there. Pretty cool.
Now, was that played for tone, or was that played because it was just so outrageous compared to a telly?
Yeah.
And, you know,
It's played because I thought Lenny Kravitz looked cool playing one, and I'm a big Lenny Kravitz fan. And I realized I'm not like some great solo player, so I could put that crux of that V on my leg and swing it right at the audience. I could do more with it, on stage, show wise.
Adam,
they sound great.
Adam
too,
says
obviously.
Adam says you're the riff meister, though. He said your riffs are incredible.
I am a riff guy, so like if you know da 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 no 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 like Hicktown and all those songs that I've written.
You wrote that.
A lot
I
of those
remember now.
Yeah, so I'll sit down with Adam and go, all right, here's the lick, and I half-ass play it, and he goes, that's a cool riff, dude, and then of course he plays it like a real pro. But yeah, that has been one key I think to my songwriting is the down down that was my lick.
That's a great tune too.
A lot of my rockin' songs were built off of some kind of little riff like that.
You produced that record, right?
Which one?
Pickin' Wildflowers?
No, actually Jeffrey Steele produced that, but I wrote it with Kim Williams and Keith Anderson. So I came and sat down with Kim, and God bless his soul, right? What a great dude he was. And Kim goes, "What you got, man?" And Keith's brand new, and he goes, I want to do something just rocking, dude. Like Hicktown, Save a Horse. And I got this lick. It's just like this halftime. It almost reminded me, I'm a huge Tom Petty fan, so I'm like, it's like, my old man was born to rock. He's still trying to beat the clock. Like it would fit in that pocket. I remember explaining that. And Keith's like, dude, I would love something that has that kind of pocket. So that's where that song came from.
Dude, with that lick, it's like even whenever you sing it, it's like it's got this thing where everybody, like me and Mike are both going.
Yeah.
Right.
Like that Rage Against the Machine thing where it's like, help,
Got the
Bob on
it's
it.
got the head bounce, man. Yeah.
I call those
loved-
tick-tockers. Tick-tock, tick-tock.
I loved Hicktown too. I thought that was a great song. Let's talk about some of the big hits you've had that people might not know because they weren't coming out of your face into a microphone. So the hit songwriting happened before the artist thing, or you were doing them both at the same time? You were trying to get a record deal?
Great question. So I was in Lone Star right out of high school at 18 years old. I was with those guys up until 1990, the beginning of 98. And then later, early in the year 99, Joe Galani was still there, and he said, I want to give you a solo deal. I said, awesome. At this point, I'd met Big Kenny. We hadn't started writing the Big and Ritz kind of stuff yet, though. And I said, great. So I did a solo record in 99 that didn't do anything. I think it had 2 singles, and they didn't do diddly squat. And then that was it. And then the phone stopped ringing from like 99 to 2003. There was 3 or 4 years of nothing was going on. I mean, nothing. I'm the guy that got fired from Lone Star and just had 2 dead singles and no more record deal and no publishing deal. And bye-bye, John. It's been fun. See you later. I mean, it sucked, to be honest with you. And at that moment, I remember sitting there going, well, they've taken everything else away. I can't get on a stage. I can't get on television. I can't get on the radio. But I've still got this. And I had a pencil and a notepad. So still got that. And I said, you know what? I'm going to focus on the one thing I can control, this pencil and this piece of paper. And so, man, I went into writing, and I was writing, and that 3 years is when I wrote pretty much all those big hits. There's a few that happened after that when Big and Rich took off on the road. But that window of time, I wrote around 600 to 700 songs in about 3.5 years.
Wow, gosh.
And that's where all that stuff came from, was in that window of time. So when Big and Rich takes off and started to get popular, artists start calling. And people go, you got any more songs that sound like this or sound like that? Well, the answer was, yeah, I wrote 700, And so they start combing through my libraries. Jason Aldean comes up and goes, dude, there's like 5 of your songs I want to cut. I went, which ones? And he goes, Amarillo Sky, Hicktown, Johnny Cash, Why, which was one of my favorite ballads still. I said, cut them all. cut them all. I said, we've already done our record, bro. Cut them. And he had hits on all those songs. And then here comes Gretchen Wilson. And, you know, it was just a steamroller there for several years. But it was in that dead time that I, you know, took advantage of the time to do it. I always tell people, especially now during COVID-19 and you're shut down and you can't do anything, you know, your business might be shut down, you lost your job, whatever it might be. You've got to find something, even something simple and small that you can control. It could be what you're eating. It could be how you're exercising. It could be your discipline on wanting to learn about a new subject or whatever it might be. Focus on that and achieve that, and you'll find a lot of clarity will happen in your mind, and that will actually, some great thoughts will hit you. So when things do turn back on, you actually improved yourself in that downtime, and that's an important way to take advantage of a situation like what we're in right now.
During your 2 to 3 years where you were sort of figuring it out, how close were you to leaving town or stopping the music business?
Never. I would have never left this town. It wouldn't have mattered what. One way or the other, I was determined that I was going to be involved in country music.
What do you think about plan Bs?
I mean, my plan B would have been, obviously songwriting to me was never really a plan. That's just something I just did, and wanted to get better and better and better at. Mentors in that too: Sharon Vaughn, Mark D. Sanders, Don Cook, Chick Raines, Larry Boone, Paul Nelson. Some of those guys that were the biggest and baddest dudes in town would actually have me come into their office and let me write with them, which I don't know why they did that. Probably because I brought alcohol and had a lot of funny jokes. Hey, have a shot. Kim Williams. Hey, I brought you a little something. Oh, thanks, John. And I had like 30 ideas. So advice I've always given new songwriters: don't ever walk in to a successful songwriter's office and have anything less than 20 developed ideas. Don't even do it. Because if you sit down with Craig Wiseman or Jeff Steele or me or anybody else like that, Rodney Clausen, you sit down with them and they go, well, what do you want to write? And the artist answer is, which this has happened to me many times, I don't know. What do you think we ought to write? I mean, it is so disrespectful because, well, why am I going to give you one of my ideas? You haven't done anything yet. You tell me if you don't even know what you want to say, why are you in my office right now? So I didn't do that. I came into their offices just loaded up. So I think, if Big and Rich hadn't happened and I never could have gotten a solo thing going, I would have just been a songwriter and produced records on people. That's another thing I enjoy doing a lot.
Yeah, you produced the James Otto record.
Yeah, he had the most played song of the year in 2008.
Yes,
Just Got Started Loving You. Great record.
I had the second most played song, and I was much regretful that song came out that year.
I'm sorry.
But I tell you what, I loved the production on that record. Is another one. James is awesome. I play with James a lot. He's just as good live as he is in the studio, I'm sure. But
oh, yeah, he's a monster. Man,
the Rhodes part on that, or the whirly part on that, it just was, I don't know really how that song could be any better. It's just, I don't really have, there's nothing for you to answer here other than me to tell you. Like, that's one of those songs as a producer. I got, Warner Brothers had reached out to me to do a crossover sort of reproduction of that, some version for Hot AC. So I got the tracks and I'm tolling through the tracks and I'm like, it was just, what a record. Like, there's not a wasted note. Man. Not a wasted note on that record.
Thanks. I had the, I had the advantage with James because we had been jamming Music Mafias for 2 years and writing songs together. So I knew exactly. I mean, I'm a fan of his, big time. Matter of fact, I don't think I've ever produced a record on somebody that I wasn't a fan of. I've been asked to do records on people, and I go, not a big fan. And I feel like if I'm not a big fan of them, it's like nothing personal against them. Their music don't really get me. I've passed on a lot of projects just because I wasn't a big fan of what that artist was doing. But Otto, I mean, I'm like, this dude is a monster singer, and getting to know him as well as I did, I knew what he liked, and he had every much to do with how that sounds as I ever did, probably even more because he's such a real artist, So, we tried to leave space in that track, so his voice could really be heard the way it needs to be heard. And man, it came out great.
Killer record. And the Redneck Woman, is that something that you developed from the beginning? Did you find her and do the record, or what? Like, what's the story?
I'll tell you, so in about 99, after Lone Star had fired me and the solo record I did completely failed, and I get dropped a second time from Joe Galante, and the phone's not ringing, but I got this new friend, Big Kenny. He's fun, so at least I got that. So we're out running around Nashville, and there's this bar called Bourbon Street Blues and Boogie Bar in Printer's Alley that me and Kenny discovered. We started going down there. This guy, Stacy Mitchhart's down there playing. We just love this guy. So we were down there 2 or 3 nights a week hanging out. And the bartender one night gets up to sing at last call about 1:30 in the morning. And I see her get up there and ponytail, covered in wine stains and beer stains. And I mean, just, been working probably a double. And she gets up and tears into an Aretha Franklin song. I ain't never loved a man the way that I love you, ba-da-da-da, bang. And she goes into these notes, and I look over at Kenny, I go, am I hammered right now, or is that like the greatest singer I've ever heard? And Kenny goes, I think probably both. I went, okay, great, and thank God she sings a second song. And I went, what am I hearing right now? It was like visually the way she sounded, it was almost like the oxygen was melting out of the room from the speaker. She just dissolved you with the way she came through that mic. And I was so struck by it. I went up to her bar as she was closing out, introduced myself, and she was thinking to herself, oh, this guy just wants to get my number or whatever, And I left her my number. I said, I don't have a record deal. I don't have any money. I said, but I do write a lot of songs, and I can pay you $100 to sing a demo, like girl versions of stuff that I write, if you ever want to make an extra $100. Well, she finally called back, came in and did a demo, and we struck up a friendship, got to know her better. And that's where that all started. And I started to understand this girl's story, drops out of school in the 8th grade because she had to, because of the life that was going on at her house was so unbelievably terrible. She had to get out of there. And Pocahontas, Illinois, the whole story. And I asked her, I said, Gretchen, you should be on the radio. I mean, you're like a modern day Tanya Tucker, Loretta Lynn. You're like one of those kind of people. I said, what is it that you would ever want to sing about in your song? She goes, hell, I ain't no songwriter. And she's spitting in a cup and smoking a cigarette, like that, and drinking beer. She goes, hell, I ain't no songwriter. I said, well, you may not think you're a songwriter, but you're bound to have something you want to say. And she points at my TV, which was on CMT, and there was a Faith Hill video on. Breathe was on. And it's Faith, and she's, surrounded in these silk sheets, and it's just this. You remember the video?
Yeah.
And she points at my TV, and Gretchen goes, well, I'll never be able to do that. She spits in the cup again. I looked at her, I said, do what? She goes, that. She goes, I'll never be that pretty. I'll never be that slick. I'll never be that pop. If that's what I got to do, good luck, because that ain't ever happening. I'm just a redneck woman. And I went, bingo. I said, yes, you are just a redneck woman. And I said, I hate to tell you this, Gretchen, there are just about 50 million women just like you all over the United States, maybe more than that. I said, what's rough about you is the same thing that was rough about Loretta. And instead of sanding those edges off, Gretchen, do what Loretta did, put a magnifying glass on it. Like, talk about it even more in graphic detail. And then all these women out here may go, that's my girl. That's me. She's talking to me. I identify with her. I said, you never know. So 45 minutes later, guys, Gretchen and I had written Redneck Woman.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think for as much as your skill set is as a brilliant songwriter, you're also a brilliant marketing guy. You're absolutely brilliant at like you see the vision.
How does he not have a record label is what I was thinking. Yeah. It's like, this is like what we need. It's sort of like, there's 50 million women out there just like her that don't have someone that can point to the TV and say, hey, that's who I am.
So you know how many showcases Gretchen did before she got a record deal? 13.
Wow.
13 showcases. Every record label in town said no. Even the independents, everybody said no. because you don't fit what's going on in country music right now. You're to this, you're to that. And she's going, let me get a big hell yeah. Radio will never play the phrase hell yeah. I mean, come on. That's what they said. I kid you not. And so Sony had turned her down. But then about 6 months later, the head of Sony got canned, and here comes a new head of Sony, right? And so we go, well, we haven't sang to that guy yet. Maybe we can go in a second time to Sony. And there sits John, and we go in his office, and she sits down, and we lay into Here for the Party, Redneck Woman, and I think it was When I Think About Cheating was the slow one. And he just writes, you see the guy writing, on a piece of paper, and he says, Gretchen, come here. And she gets up, and she's got, like, what's going on? She was pregnant at the time on top of that. I mean, it was like all kinds of things. And he hands her this little yellow sticky note, and it just says, yes.
Wow.
It says, yes. And big old tears. And we're like, what does it say? And she turns around, she shows me the paper, and it says, yes. And I went, oh, my God, it actually just happened. That's what she had to go through to get a chance. Think about that. Somebody with the ability that Gretchen Wilson has and how iconic she is now, and what she was talking about was so spot on with the general public, but the music industry did not understand that to the point of it took 13 different no's to finally get a yes. What does that tell you as an artist?
Perseverance.
That tells you that if you think you've got the goods, it doesn't matter what they have to say. Persistence is going to be the key. Do you really want to do this? Or do you just want to do it to get famous and make some money and meet some girls? What is the reason you're really wanting to do this?
Yeah.
Is this a hobby? Is this a hobby to you? Or is this your life that we're talking about? And therein lies the difference between people that actually go the distance or not.
I think in all creative businesses, the one thing that separates us from others is it's completely subjective. So you might love a song and I might not love it. It doesn't matter. It's like, but there's going to be an audience. If it's good enough, it will cut through. Well,
the problem with a lot of executives in Nashville is they live in a bubble. So they, the artists have the advantage of we're out on the road. We know who we're singing to. We know who we're talking to. We know what we're not tone deaf. It's interesting that people that run music companies would be, quote, tone deaf, right? So that is part of the problem. I think some of the guys that have done best in town are probably the ones that go out and get on the tour bus with their acts, and they see what kind of people are showing up at those shows, and they use that information and knowledge to help guide that artist and let that artist do what they want to do because they understand who the audience is. But that's very few that will actually do that.
So you not only Big and Rich was the biggest thing in town probably in country music for a period of time, just phenom out of nowhere, out of left field. And then the Gretchen Wilson thing was before that or right after it?
It was right after. So in, I believe it was April of 2004, Redneck Woman, Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy, and Hicktown all went for ads at the same exact time.
Oh, wow. You must have felt like you ran the town for a minute.
Well, yeah. Well 6 months before that, Tim Whipperman dropped me from my publishing deal at Warner Chappell Music and said my songs weren't worth pitching.
What do you do with that? What do you do with those little moments? You just let them be, right? You don't. Not like you make a phone call.
No, I didn't. I did not just let it be, and he didn't just let it be either. They gave me a phone call about 6 months after that. And says, we would like you to come back under your own terms. Wow. I said, oh, is that right? I said, I don't think I want to come back. And my attorney goes, John, pipe down. They said under your own terms. Do you know what that means? And at that point, I'm like, not really. I don't really know the ramifications of what that could mean. So I told Tim Whipperman I would come back, and my terms were my entire catalog reverted back to me in 36 months. All of it. 640 something songs. I said, that's amazing. My terms. Those are my terms.
Wow.
And they go, you got it. And I went, okay, I guess I'm at Warner Chappell again. So 36 months after 2003, my entire catalog came back to me 100%.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a story people don't know in Music Pro. People don't know that story.
Yeah.
So what's your interest in Music Row right now? Is it even on your radar? You still writing a ton? Are you? I mean, it's got so much going on. I can't picture. Like, I look at you and I think, man, how does this guy even have time to write? How does he have time to develop acts and how to produce records and put out new records?
I do not sit down to write songs to try to get cuts or anything like that, unless an artist specifically calls me and says, hey, I would like to write a song about this, or that feels like that. Can I come over to the house to write a song? Then I'll dial right in on that. But I don't look at pitch sheets and stuff like that. I've got a lot of stuff going on. But I will tell you, a song that I wrote about a month ago is called Earth to God. And I would say I've now written over 2,000 songs. And I would say that Earth to God, if you ask me right this second, what's probably the most powerful words I've ever been able to string together, it would be Earth to God. It says, Earth to God, come in, God. I know you're there hearing our prayers wherever you are. We need you now to send your love down. Take away the pain in your holy name. We ask this now. We need your light. We need your love to heal the world you made. And save us now in our darkest hour with your amazing grace. Earth to God. Come in, God. And so it's like Earth is hailing God, that starts off with this single piano note, ding, 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 and then it goes into the song. And the theater of the mind for that is that Earth as humanity is sending an SOS to God. God, we need you. Come in. Earth to God, come in, God. And what do you want to hear God say? This is God. Come back, Earth. Huh? That's what you want to hear. So, yes, I'm still writing songs, but it's not in bulk. I'm not bulk writing songs like I used to.
Well, it's been great talking to you. I have to ask you, just because you were on The Apprentice, what was that experience like with Trump? Was that?
I know this could be a 2-hour. This could be a 2-hour podcast if we don't watch it out. He could be like the Joe Rogans of.
We're going to jump off, but I just can't let it end without knowing like what that was like. Do you feel like, is he the kind of guy that what you see is what you get? Did you feel manipulated? How does that feel?
What you see is what you get, and yes, you feel manipulated. I mean, you know, he's actually one of the best things I saw him ever do was I was on an elevator with just him and Melania, and we were riding one floor to another for something involving the show. And there was an elevator attendant. This is in Trump Tower. And the elevator attendant's standing there like this, and he's got his back to us, and, you know, he's calling the floor. And Donald Trump kind of puts his hand on the guy's shoulder and says, how's it going, buddy? Everything going okay? And the guy turns around and looks, because Trump's a pretty big guy. He goes, yes, sir, Mr. Trump, everything's going great. He goes, will you let me know if you need anything? And I really appreciate all the hard work you're doing here in my building. And he tipped the guy, gave the guy a big tip, and walked off the elevator. And I went, that's a great thing. Because I think one misconception, there's a lot of stuff about Donald Trump that I wish he'd stop doing and stop saying, probably like everybody else. But seeing him in moments like that, when you realize he is thinking about that little guy, he does care about that little guy and wants to make sure that guy knows I appreciate you. That was a nice moment. He's actually pretty funny. Like when the cameras turn off, he's cracking jokes and, you know, eats a lot of Tic Tacs. You probably don't know that. He eats a lot of Tic Tacs. What a job he's got. I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect person, meaning there's no such thing as a perfect president. Wouldn't matter who it was. We've never had one and we never will. I don't envy that position whatsoever. And I think I would go back to probably in closing here, I guess, that, you know, yesterday, me being able to sit down with an absolute 180 opinion of my own and a person in a position of power in Nashville and carry on a 1-hour conversation on a sidewalk at a little table outside a coffee shop, talking about various very serious issues. And we actually find some cross-pollination on some of the thoughts we were having was a great thing. And I think that can happen across our country. But the ones of us that want to see that happen have to start doing that out in the open to show everybody else it actually can be done and lead by example.
Yeah, agreed.
Can you tell us where we can find the show, the new show?
Yeah, so the Pursuit's on foxnation.com. You can go watch it. I think it's like 99 cents or something. And there's like thousands of shows. My whiskey, Redneck Riviera Whiskey, now is in 49 states. RedneckRiviera.com. Over 10,000 stores now we're in on my store locator, which is insane. Nice. It's only been out 2.5 years. I give 10% of every bottle to the Folds of Honor, which is a group that puts kids through college who lost a parent in combat fighting for our country. Redneck Riviera Whiskey now has funded over 100 college grants in 2.5 years. So if you're looking for something for this weekend or anytime,
so
go to
whiskey
that store
can do good.
on the website. What's that?
So whiskey can do good.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, my dad's a preacher, and he goes, I hear you got a whiskey brand. And I said, yeah. He goes, are you tithing on it? I said, yes, sir. 10% to the Folds of Honor. What do they do? And I told him, he goes, well, that's pretty great. I said, Dad, you know, Jesus didn't turn the water into Dr. Pepper. He goes, that is true. That is true.
Dude.
So listen, we're trying to have fun. We're trying to stay positive during this time, continue to work on ourselves. What you guys are doing is important. These kinds of conversations are important. America needs to pay attention to each other. Listen to each other for a minute. It's okay to disagree because you always will, but it doesn't mean the other guy's a bad guy. Just keep that in mind.
Well,
I love that.
People with strong opinions have strong responsibilities, and it's really cool to see a guy so dedicated to a thought and an ideology that's got so much love in his heart and really wanting the best for the other person in the dialogue. And it's something that's those two things don't usually live together. So my hat's off to you. Great job. You're an inspiration to me and other entrepreneurs in the music business. And thank you so much for coming on the West Barn with us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, John.
Good being with you, boys. Thank you.